The goal for this video is to implement the first half of the creation flow, which is the way for the user to create a new map. We want to add a click listener when the user taps on the floating action button, and when they tap on that, we go into this view where they can drop markers or pins onto the map and save it. The first thing we'll do is add a floating action button in the bottom right of our main activity. So the floating action button, or fab, is the common Android way to indicate to the user that there is a primary action for the user to take, for example, create a new object. So the way we'll do that is go into activity main and then just search for floating action button and then drag that out. And you'll be prompted to specify the icon, which should be inside of your floating action button. I'm going to indicate I want icy input add, which is just a standard plus button. Floating action button also requires a library, so Android Studio will include that into your build.gradle file for you. And we're going to constrain this view to the bottom and to the left. So I'll make it 32 dp, or 32 density independent pixels from the bottom and right. And then sometimes floating action button, I also have this weird bug in Android Studio where it doesn't actually render for me in the preview until I actually run the app. So let me see if that works. Yeah, now you can see that it does show up. Instead of the plus icon being a green color, I'd like it to be white. And there's an easy way to fix that. There's a tint, and you can just specify the color to be white. And there you can see it updated. The other thing we'll do is change the ID. I'll just make it fab create map. This is how we'll refer to it in main activity. So if we run the app, we'll just make sure that we're able to see the action button properly. Yeah, we are. Okay, and it is clickable. So what we want to do is we want to listen for clicks on that button in the main activity. We'll say fab and then on click listener. And then first I just put a log statement. So what we want to do at this point is we would like when the user taps on the floating action button to navigate to a new activity, which is designed for the user to drop pins into the map and save it. When that action is done, when the user has finished their map and they want to save it, we would like for that new activity that we'll create to pass data back to main activity, the parent activity. And so this is a pretty common paradigm in Android apps. And so if you go back to the code path guide, below where we just were, which is a section about passing data to launched activities, there's a section about returning data result to parent activity, which is exactly what we're trying to do here. We're going to be calling a different method, start activity for result. And that what that's indicating to the Android system is that we're starting this activity, but we would like to potentially get data back from the activity that we're starting. And that requires passing in a request code. And a request code is arbitrary integer, which can be used to uniquely identify the request to that activity. So let's add that logic. So we'll say val intent is equal to intent, and then we're going to pass in the where we're coming from, which is this. And next we want to indicate the class that we're navigating to. So for that, let's open up the project pane and let's create a brand new activity, which we'll call create map activity. And again, this is going to be a map activity. So the nice thing is this is going to be a bit faster because we can utilize the same API key that we already used from last time. So there's only one file, Google Maps API, so there's no need to change that anymore. And then if we open up create map activity, it has the same exact starter code as what we had seen for display map activity. So for now, let's just navigate to this and we'll see the same thing, which is a marker on the Sydney location. And let's say start activity for result. And then we'll pass in intent along with a request code. And we need to define what this request code is. And again, like I said, this can be any arbitrary integer. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. And so let's not worry, at least right now, about what will happen in create map activity. But when create map activity is done doing its job, which is to generate a new user map, we want to capture the result of that back in main activity so we can update the recycler view. So the way we can do that is by overriding a method on the activity class called onActivityResult. And this, you can see that it takes in a request code, a result code, and the data, which should contain the user map. So we'll first check if the request code matches up with our request code. And also we want to make sure that the result code is equal to result OK, which is the Android way of indicating that everything went fine. And if so, there should now be map information from the data object that we get passed back. Okay, one more thing we'll do before we run the app is before the user navigates to the new create map activity class, we'd like to prompt them to ask for the title of the new user map. For now, let's not worry about that. Instead, I'll just hard code in the value. But the way we'll communicate the title of that map into the create map activity is similar to what we're doing with the display map activity. So we're going to put extra and we're going to pass in a string. So we'll say intent.putExtra, and then I'm going to define another constant called title, map title. And then let's just hard code in some value here. And on the other end, on the create map activity, we'd like to set the title of the support action bar to be the map title that we passed in. Now we can try this. So I tap on the floating action button, and now you can see the hard-coded value, new map name, as the title of our activity. The way we'd like for the create map activity to work is the user can long press on any part of the map, and that will drop a marker at that location where the user can specify the title and description for that marker, for that pin. So the way this works is we can add a long click listener on the map, and then that will give us the location of where the user did the long press. So let's add a log statement so we can better keep track of this. Okay, and then whenever the user has made a long press, let's just put an arbitrary marker in with some hard-coded title and description information. So the position will be the position that the callback here gives to us. So the parameter could be latLng, so that'll be the position. And then the title can be my new marker, along with the snippet, which is a description of a cool snippet. Let's try it. So now wherever we do a long press on the map, we should see a marker show up there. And if I tap on that marker, I see the title and description that we had hard-coded, and I can repeat this process as much as I want. One of the things we'll want is a data structure which will keep track of all the markers that the user is adding to the map, and so that when we save the whole map, we should be able to iterate through that and generate a user map from all these markers. And so in order to maintain this, I'm going to have a variable here called markers. And this is going to be a list of marker. Actually, it's going to be a mutable list because we might be adding to it as the user does long presses. And initially it'll be empty. So every time the user adds a marker with the long press, we want to add that to our list of markers, this member variable. The way we can get a handle on the marker is by capturing the return value of mMap.addMarker. I'll say now markers.addMarker. One more thing we'd like is to allow the user to delete markers that they've already put onto the map. And I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but one simple way I found to make this possible is if the user taps on the info window, which shows up when you tap on a marker, that can be an indication that they want to delete that marker. So I'll say mMap.delete window click listener, and then here we want to delete the marker. On window click listener, delete this marker. And this is convenient because the parameter for this function is the marker that we want to delete. And so in order to delete this, the first thing we'll want is to delete it from our list of markers. So we'll say remove, and we want to remove that guy. And then we also want to remove this marker from the map. And the way that works is you say marker to delete dot remove. Let's try it. It looks like we have an error here. Yeah. So I think we need to specify a mutable list of marker. And then actually we don't need the type parameterization anymore because that should be inferred from the declaration. Okay, so what we expect now is we should be able to long press and that will drop a pin like before. But now if I tap on the window, it should delete that marker. And you can see it does that properly. Now we'd like for the user to be able to customize the title and snippet when they're adding a marker onto the map. So instead of immediately adding a marker with the hard-coded values, instead, let's show an alert dialog where the user can input the information they care about. So I'm going to have a method here called show alert dialog. And we're going to pass in the latitude and longitude here because we'll need that when eventually we add the marker. And so all of this stuff we're going to move down into the show alert dialog. But we only want to do this if the user has tapped OK on the alert dialog and they have the information filled out. So to learn how to show an alert dialog, open up this guide from CodePath called Using Dialog Fragment. And then if you scroll down a bit, there's a section here about building a dialog by customizing the available dialog object. So that's what we're going to start out with. We'll get a new alert dialog builder and we'll set various attributes on that. This takes in a context. And we will set various options such as title. Just for now, we'll say set message as hello, and we'll change that later. And then we'll set a positive and negative button. And when you call .show, this is actually going to now return to us a dialog. Let me clean this up a bit. And then what we'd like is we only want to add the marker onto the map if the user has tapped on the OK button, the positive button. The way we can set that up is we'll grab the button, the OK positive button, and then we're going to set a click listener on this. And so only when it's clicked do we take this action. Let's try it. So now if we do a long press, we should see an alert dialog, and it shows create a marker along with the message, which is hello, and we have the two buttons as we expect. If I tap on cancel, we don't see a marker, but if I do tap on OK, we should see a marker show up. One thing that I forgot to do is if I tap on OK, we should now dismiss the dialog. Okay, so the next step is instead of just having the hello as the message of the alert dialog, we actually want a custom view, and that custom view will contain two edit texts. These two edit texts will be one for the title and one for the description. The way we can do that is by calling this method setView instead of setMessage. And this is now going to be the view which contains all the information. Place form view, and then we're going to create this view up here. So I'm calling this layout dialog create place, and now Android Studio will help us to create a layout resource file with that name. And linear layout is a good root element because it's going to be very simple, just 2 edit text stacked on top of each other. So linear layout by default will be vertical, which is what we want. And then let's add in 2 edit texts here. So the name, and then right below that is one more edit text, which will be for the description. So the first one, which currently says name, we would like it to say, the hint should be title. And then the one below that, the hint should be description. And the ID of this one should be ET description. And then this should be ET title. And then one more thing we can do is set some padding on the linear layout, at least on the beginning and end, so that it fits more nicely with the alert dialog, because everything else in the alert dialog will have some padding. I'm going to search for the padding attribute, and then let's just add 15 dp at the start and at the end. Another thing is, because the title is more important or more prominent, let's make the font of that one bigger. I will make it 24 SP. Okay, so we've defined the dialog create place properly, that this works, and now place form view, it should show up when we are long pressing on the map. Yes, it shows up properly. One thing that looks like a mistake is I changed the hint text of the second edit text, so I didn't get rid of the default text, which is name. So let's go back and clean that up really fast. So the hint should be description, and that looks much better. So now, when we have tapped on the OK button, we still don't want to add a marker until we've done some sanity checking on the form. So if the user hasn't inputted any title or any description on that marker, we don't want to allow them to create a marker or a place in the map at that position. So in general, whenever you're dealing with user input data, you need to be very careful about sanitizing and making sure that data is validated. So we're basically doing error validation and form handling right here. So what we want to do is check the value of the different attributes in the place form view. So the title will be place form view dot find view by ID, and it's going to be an edit text. And the ID is ID dot title, ET title, and we'll get the text and call toString on it, and this will give us back the string version of the title. And we're going to do something quite similar for the description, except the ID is ET description. So the idea is that if either the title or description is empty, then we should not allow the user to create a marker there. So first thing I'm doing is trimming it so that in case the user puts in a space bar, there's empty space, we still don't want to allow that. So then we can, at this point, say toast place must have non-empty title and description. And then if this happens, we want to return from this on-click listener on the positive button. And then let's make the toast show up for a long amount of time. Okay, and if that worked, so we have a valid title and description, we want to update the marker to include these values. Let's try it. So I tap on the floating action button, I drop a marker here, and I'll say Western Australia. If I tap on OK now, I properly see this error message, and if I tap into description, now I should be able to submit this marker. And then the window, as expected, does show the values I inputted. If I tap on it, I'm able to still delete the marker like we did previously. Okay, the last thing I want to do in this video is give the user some education about how they can create a map, because it's not that intuitive that you need to long press in order to be able to create a marker. And so to do that education, we're going to be using something called a SnackBar. So SnackBar, if you open up the code path guide, is a component which is shown at the bottom of the screen, and it contains text with the optional single action. So these are pretty common as an elegant way to inform the user that something has happened, or if you want to provide some information to the user. So the way this works is you say SnackBar.make, you pass in the parent view, and you provide the text and a length. So let's do that at the very beginning, as soon as the view is created. So we'll say SnackBar.make, and then we'll pass in the view, and the view will be coming from the map fragment. And then here's the message, long press to add a marker. And the length of our SnackBar will be infinite, length indefinite, until the user taps on the action option. And so for us, we are going to have an action which just says OK. And we won't do anything special when you tap on OK. We'll just dismiss the SnackBar, which is already happening by default. The color of the action should be white, because by default the SnackBar will be black, so we want it to be maximum contrast. So we'll say, we'll pass in white, and the way we do that is you need to pass in context compat, get color, pass in a context, and then actually pass in the color. So android.r.color.white. And finally, we should need to call show in order for the SnackBar to actually show up. You'll notice here that Android Studio is complaining that mapFragment.view might be null, and so it's recommending that we use this syntax, which is saying that we only execute this code if the view of the map fragment is non-null. This is an elegant way of avoiding a null check. So if we run this now, we expect as soon as we tap on the floating action button that we see a SnackBar at the bottom of the screen. And you can see that we see long press to add a marker. If I tap on OK, it goes away, and then we have the same functionality as before. So at this point, the hardest part of the creation flow is done. The next video will wrap up with the creation flow, and at that point, we'll be almost done with the whole app. So if you're enjoying this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions. See you in the next video.